Hi, in this video I'll show you how to crochet a hat like this. I'll be crocheting it with a brim. Even a beginner can crochet this hat because it's very simple. It has this kind of brim, although you can also crochet it without a brim. This hat has an interesting crown. For the hat's crown to hold its shape well, it's better not to use too thin or delicate yarn for crocheting the hat. The hat is elastic and stretches well. The crown of the hat also stretches. Therefore, if you crochet this hat shorter, it will completely hug your head and have a classic shape. But I crocheted it quite high. My head ends here in the hat. So on top there's a playful crown sticking up. And as I said, the most important thing is to choose yarn so that this crown doesn't flop to the side. It's best to use merino yarn or a blend with acrylic. Such yarn will give the crown the necessary stiffness. My hat has a wide brim. If desired, it can be made narrower, or you can crochet the hat without a brim at all. Now I'll measure the hat's dimensions. The width of the hat is approximately 27 centimeters. And the height is approximately 28 centimeters. Okay, let me measure the brim width too. About 13 centimeters. But both the height, the hat's volume, and the brim height can be adjusted independent of your preferences. The hat has a seam. It's located here. Do you see it? I almost don't. But it's right here. It looks very neat. Let me remove the brim now so you can see how the seam looks. My hat is long and doesn't fit on the screen. The seam is located right here. And let me show you how the seam looks from the wrong side. Like this. Now I'll show the seam up close. This is how it looks on one side. This is how it transitions from one pattern to another. And here it's almost invisible. It blends very well with the hat's pattern and it becomes invisible. From the wrong side, the seam looks like this. Everything is quite neat here too. The seam is more noticeable here. So let's start crocheting the hat. You can use absolutely any yarn you have, any thickness you like. I'm crocheting with this one. It's Alize Lanagold Fine. It has 390 meters per 100 grams. 49% wool, 51% acrylic. As a carry-along yarn to make the hat a bit hairy, as is popular now, I'm using Alize Angora Gold yarn. It has 20% wool and 80% acrylic. And I'm crocheting with one strand of fine and 2 strands of Angora. And here I have a ball of 3 strands, 2 fluffy and 1 smooth. This is to make the hat denser and to give it, as I said, a beautiful fluff. I will be crocheting with a 5mm hook. I'll also need 2 stitch markers and a needle for seaming the hat. So let's start crocheting. I make the first chain stitch like this. For my hat height with a high brim, I'll chain 50. If you want a smaller brim, you'll chain fewer stitches accordingly. If you're crocheting with multiple strands like me, make sure the hook catches all the strands. So I'm chaining 50 stitches. If you need fewer, chain fewer. I'm finishing chaining 50 stitches and I get this long chain of stitches. Approximately this height will be your hat. But of course the length of the hat will also depend on the composition of the yarn you use. It might shrink a bit or it might stretch a bit or after washing. But roughly speaking, the hat will be approximately this height. Mine is quite long because the brim will be approximately this size. Maybe even a little bit bigger. And here on top I will have the crown. And this crown will be a bit pointy standing. If you want a smaller brim, then as I said, chain fewer stitches. And if you want a hat without a brim, you can chain, say, 35 stitches. I will crochet the hat in turning rows. And I will crochet with 3 patterns. These patterns look visually similar, but their row height is different, and because of this, I will get a natural narrowing of the hat towards the crown. The wider part will be positioned at the face, the narrower part will be the hat's crown. Now I need markers to mark the beginning and end of different patterns. This will be the crown of the hat. I count 5 chain stitches. This means I will crochet these 5 stitches with 1 pattern. I mark it with a marker. I'll check if I've accurately counted 5 stitches. I mark the 5th stitch with a marker. Then I count 10 stitches. Here I will crochet with the second pattern. All patterns are very simple, don't worry about that. I mark it with a marker. I'll recount again to avoid mistakes. So exactly 10 stitches. If you're going to chain fewer stitches for the hat, you should still mark the same number of stitches with a marker. Here I will crochet with the main pattern, and you will adjust the length of your hat with this main pattern. So I start crocheting. I make a chain stitch for turning. And now I will crochet half double crochets. I yarn over, insert the hook into the stitch, catch the yarn, pull it through, getting 3 loops on the hook. And pull the working yarn through these 3 loops, and we get a half double crochet. And look, here in the chain stitch we have 1 half loop, a second half loop, and on the back side a bump. And I insert the hook under the top half loop and the bump. The bottom half loop remains below. Always do it this way. This is necessary for a beautiful and invisible seam. When we crochet the entire main fabric, we will seam the hat. And for us to get the desired beautiful seam, we need to crochet the first row this way. And so I will crochet until the next marker. I crochet half double crochets into each stitch of the chain. I yarn over and pull the working yarn through with the hook. And now I pull the yarn through 3 loops. And I do this in every stitch. I crochet this pattern for 35 stitches. You might have fewer stitches if you are crocheting a hat with a narrower brim or even without a brim at all. You can also try it on yourself to see what length of hat you need. And so I'm finishing crocheting the last stitches in this row with this pattern. Here again, I didn't catch the whole stitch again and I didn't even notice it, but it might be noticeable on the finished fabric, so pay attention to this. Now I move on to the next pattern. And these are regular single crochets. I crochet a single crochet like this. Now I'll put the marker back in place. It doesn't want to cooperate, but it's okay, I'll fix it. And now I crochet the next 10 stitches in single crochet. I crochet 1 single crochet into each stitch. Again, I didn't catch all the strands with the hook. Oh well, I'll fix it now. I'm approaching the end of crocheting this pattern. I have 5 stitches left. I'll remove the marker for now so it doesn't get in the way. I'll put it back later. I'll crochet these 5 stitches with slip stitches. Now I'll show you how I do it. I insert the hook as usual, pull up a loop, and then pull this same loop through the loop on the hook. And I repeat these manipulations 4 more times. I crochet this way until the end of the row. Because the stitches at the beginning of the chain can be quite tight, crocheting might not be very comfortable, but I'll manage. Here's the last stitch where I'm crocheting a slip stitch. So I've crocheted the first row. And now I'll put the marker back. Now I'll crochet the row on the wrong side. We turn the work and look, on top are these little braids. This braid has a back loop. Here it is, this back loop or back wall of the stitch. This is the front wall or front loop. From now on, in all rows and all patterns, I will crochet all stitches into the back loop only. That is, only into this part. And if you ever get lost, wondering which is which half loop, place your work vertically like this. Look at it from top to bottom and we'll crochet into this half loop. I make 1 chain stitch for turning. And into the back loop I will crochet the same 5 slip stitches. I will crochet them exactly the same way, but I will only insert the hook into the back loop. The slip stitch crocheting scheme itself is exactly the same. Next, I move on to crocheting single crochets, our next pattern, and I crochet it into the back loop as well. I do it like this. So in one hat I'm crocheting 3 different types of ribbing, and they are all different widths, and this is what allows me to get the conical shape of the hat. I crochet 10 single crochets into the back loop. Now I'm transitioning to crocheting half double crochets. And I also crochet them into the back loop. This is the third pattern, the third option for ribbing with a hook. I crochet like this until the end of the row. When approaching the end, you need to crochet right up to the very last stitch. This very last stitch, it usually hides and can be missed. If you miss it, the crocheting will become skewed. If you are not sure that you have crocheted the correct number of stitches, then just recount the stitches. I crochet the very last stitch not into the back loop but into the entire stitch. This is to prevent the hat's brim from stretching and to help it hold its shape. This is not mandatory, of course. If you want the bottom of your hat to be looser, then crochet into the last half loop. But keep in mind that in this case there's a chance the bottom of the hat will stretch too much and won't look very good. My hat has a wide brim. I want it to hold its shape and not stretch. Therefore, I will crochet the last stitch into both loops into the whole braid, but you decide for yourself what you prefer. On the side where the half double crochets are located, I will begin and end the row by crocheting a half double crochet into the entire braid. I crocheted one chain stitch for turning. And now I crochet a half double crochet not into the back loop but into both. Then I continue to crochet all stitches into the back loop. I do it like this. I've crocheted to the marker. Here I change the pattern to single crochets. I crochet them into the back loop. My marker fell here. The last 5 stitches I crochet with slip stitches. I've crocheted just a couple of rows, and already it's visible that the work narrows towards the crown of the hat. Next, I will crochet following the same principle as the last row, and I will crochet in turning rows. I will get a trapezoidal fabric. It will narrow towards the crown and will be wide on the other side. All rows will be crocheted identically. This part will be crocheted with half double crochets. I crochet the first stitch into both loops, all subsequent stitches into the back loop. I crochet this part of the hat with single crochets, and at the end I crochet a section with slip stitches, and all of it is crocheted into the back loop. And only the first stitch here, or if it's the end of the row, then the last, I crochet into both loops. This is needed so that the edge of the crocheted fabric is more stable, not loose. On the other side, we don't need this because we'll be seaming the crown there. So crochet as many rows as you need. I've crocheted 34 rows. The crocheted fabric is clearly visible here. This is half double crochets. This part is single crochets, and this part is slip stitches. And this is how the crocheting looks overall. Here's the beginning of the crocheting, the first row. This is the right side where we started crocheting. And it's essential to end the row so that the yarn is on the right side. That means you need to crochet an even number of rows. This is necessary so that when seaming the hat, the seam is as invisible as possible. I'll show you up close later how the last row should look. Because I crocheted into both loops at the bottom of the hat, the fabric there turned out to be more stable. And in the middle, it's more elastic. I did this intentionally so that my hat, this brim, would hold its shape and look good. Now I'll measure the dimensions. From the crown to the bottom of the hat, it's approximately 40 centimeters. And now let's measure here. So here my width is about 50 centimeters. But you crochet as many rows as you need for your head circumference. I'm removing the markers, I don't need them anymore. And look, this is how the last row should look. The last stitch you crocheted should be on the right side. I'll secure the last stitch now. I just pull the yarn ball through the loop and tighten it. Let me show you the hat joining again. Here's my first row. Here it is. I started crocheting from it. From here I picked up stitches. Here's the tail. I chained stitches here. And I crocheted the first row in this direction. This is it. It should be on the right side. And here's the last row where I showed you. And now I fold the hat to start seaming it. You need to fold the hat right side out. I'll show you closer. This is the first row I crocheted. It's visible. And this is my last row. So I folded it so the first row was on top and the last row was on the bottom. And now I'm going to seam. Now I'll show you which loops to seam for the most invisible seam. On one side we will seam into these loops. On the other side, into these. To make the seam, you need to measure out a certain amount of yarn so that it's enough for both seaming the hat and seaming the crown. For this, you need to measure approximately 3 lengths of the hat. I've measured 3 hat lengths. I cut the yarn. I take the seaming needle. I start sewing. At the bottom, if you recall how we crocheted into these back loops. I will seam into them. On the other side, I have one single half loop that remained when crocheting the very first row, and on this side I will seam into it. I will seam using the principle of the Kitchener stitch for closed stitches, catching the half loops that we need. I do it like this. Here I don't do it like this, I do it like that. Now from the top I go back into the same stitch from where the yarn came out. Here I thread the needle through the next stitch, and here we go back into the same half loop from where the thread came out. I stitch it like this. But if you felt that you didn't do it quite straight, that there is some displacement, you can undo the seam and start seaming again. Mine is straight, so I continue to seam. I do it like this. We seam all the stitches. I've reached the crown of the hat. Now the seam looks like this. This will be my right side. Now I need to finish seaming the crown. I have enough yarn left for seaming. Look, there are these loops here. I will catch them with the needle in a zigzag pattern all around. I do it like this. I'm finishing sewing to the point where I started. Now I pull as tightly as possible to close the hole. I pull tight. Here's the tail that was left from the beginning of crocheting. Pull the yarn tighter and you can tie a knot using this tail. I cut the yarn tail, and all that's left is to weave in the yarn ends. Let me tie one more knot just to be sure. I'll weave in the yarn ends using a crochet hook. I do it like this. Don't trim the yarn tails after weaving them in until you've washed the hat. When you wash the hat, the yarn will blend with the main fabric and it will hold so well. Weave in all the tails this way or any other way. That's it, the head is ready. Thank you for being with me. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and see you in new videos.